Guys, welcome back to the after party. Last night we saw episode 3 and 4 of The Last Dance. I'm Mackenzie Salmon. Of course, we have BJ Armstrong here with us on behalf of Mitchell and Ness. They've got all the Bulls gear you could want, including a BJ Armstrong jersey. I saw that on the website. I love it. Today I wanted to start off by talking about one of my favorite people I've actually never met, but Dennis Rodman, and then get into your personal involvement with the Doc and then the Bulls-Pistons rivalry, and then eventually the first championship in 91. So jumping right into it, in 95, Dennis joined the Bulls, and then there was obviously that history with the Bulls and the Pistons, which we can get to a little bit. But I want to know from your perspective, was Dennis considered a villain on the Pistons, and what was your perception of Rodman when he was in Detroit?
Well, my perception of him was he was a very, very good basketball player. He had a unique skill set, and that skill set was he brought effort and energy every time he entered into the game. You know, at that particular time in his career, he was coming off the bench, but he was such a well-respected opponent. He was a very tough defensive player, but he brought a certain energy and moxie to the game that was hard to overcome, and it was contagious. When he'd come in the game, he'd start, pointing in the crowd and diving on the floor and doing all those things, and it really picked up the energy of the game. Now, the young Dennis Rodman, who you saw later in his career, was basically he was an interior player, right? He was a power forward, yep. But earlier in his career, he was a very versatile defender. He could really move his feet. He had size, length, his reaction times, his ability to run. I mean, he ran like a deer, right? He was just, he was just fearless in the way he played. So we knew about him. We were very respectful of him, but he could guard, he could guard Pippen, he could guard Jordan, he could guard the point guards, bigs. So he was just he was really a problem, to be honest with you. And eventually he came to the Bulls and played and was able to really help them and propel them to winning, 3 more championships later in 96, 97, and 98.
So did MJ and Scotty and did the whole team view him as like a pest? Was he one of those people where it was like, when you guys went up against him, you were just like, he's so annoying?
Well, back then, because it's funny to watch the game now with the perspective, because I get it. Like now, the game is different. The way they play and the physicality of the game is gone. But to be honest with you, mentally, he was a very, very tough player. And that's the way the game was played. I mean, we all played that way, and you expect it to get bumped. You expect it to get knocked down. That was just the way it was. We didn't know any different. So was he looked at as a pest? Well, we saw all the antics, and we were very aware of the antics. But underneath all the antics, make no doubt about it, he was a Hall of Fame player, and he had to be respected with such. And you know what? We had to go out there and play and compete against him as well.
Yeah. And episode 3 focused obviously a lot on the eccentric nature of him when he really came into the spotlight. I want to know from a player's perspective, how was he perceived by the NBA fraternity in a sense? Because he was a lot different than the other guys, in a sense of with the makeup, the different clothing, the hairstyle. Like he wasn't like a lot of players back then.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. It's always fun to reflect. And, when you see the NBA logo next time, Mackenzie, and all our younger viewers, underneath the logo, right, the Jerry West logo, it says NBA Entertainment in real small print. and we always think of, NBA and sports and competition and me versus you. But underneath all of that, there was NBA Entertainment, okay? And with that entertainment, you saw the introduction of the popularity of the game, right? You saw Jack Nicholson come into the games. And when you would go to LA, the Forum, it was a reason they called it the Fabulous Forum, because of all of the stars that was there. This was kind of the introduction. I remember when Paula Abdul and all of those people were, coming to the games. And then, it became popular to be at those events, right? When you go to a Laker game or you go to a Knick game, you see all of the who's who at the game. And Dennis gravitated to that, right? The games now were going to, there was this little station that came out called ESPN, right? I don't know if you heard of them. And ESPN was coming, and they were like publicizing the games, and it was like really a highlight of all of the games. And so as the game was going with the popularity, we were crossing over, and I said the league was crossing over into not only just sports, but the entertainment aspect. Yeah. And you saw Madonna coming at the games. You saw all of these stars being at the games. Spike Lee was this young, radical, director who was coming at the games. You saw all of these people. So it was fun for us to be around them. They enjoyed us. Sure. And, you love it. You go, and I was a fan of hip hop. So I love going to New York. I would see all of my favorite rappers, and it was just really fun. And at the time, Dennis was at the forefront of that. So yes, we saw the hair. We saw all the drama and the theatrics. Yeah. But when he was in between the lines, he always respected the game. And that's the one thing, Mackenzie, I can't stress enough, especially with this generation, is there was a mutual respect that you had for the game and for your craft beyond all of the things that you see, because it was just entertainment. And that was when I first came in the league in 1989, Adam Silver was running this little department in the NBA called NBA Entertainment. And NBA Entertainment was the really kind of at the forefront of really saying this could be bigger than the actual game itself. Yeah. So a lot of things were going on at the time that now we're just looking at like, what was wrong with those people back in the 80s, right? Like, how dare they just think it was sports, right? How dare that we just put on shorts and a tank top, actually these people are people. Drama. Yeah, you got to add some theater to it. So the NBA, the players, we embraced it, right? I mean, Magic had Showtime, and Larry Bird, up there in Boston, and Jordan, Air Jordan was a character. So we were all just playing our characters as we were growing the business. And but underneath all of that was the respect for the game.
Mm-hmm. And when Rodman joined the team in '95, I think from the doc, what I saw, not that he was taken in with some skepticism, but, going from a team like the Pistons to the Bulls, where there was that rivalry, how was it able to work with Scottie and MJ so well? And what role do you think Phil had a part in of that?
Well, again, Dennis was going to be Dennis, but, underneath, they knew he was going to be a very responsible basketball player. So, if you really just want to cut through all of the, everything that was going on at that time, performance trumped everything that you did, right? So Jordan was, Michael Jordan was shooting movies for crying out loud, right? He was shooting Space Jam, right? And I remember, see, you love that movie. And I remember thinking, like, who's ever going to watch this movie with a guy on a green screen, right? And like, I remember thinking that. I remember going out there, and he was telling me he was filming this movie, and I was like, this just doesn't sound right. Like, who's going to watch this movie? But, of course, it was probably better for me. Little did I know. It's better that I stayed in my lane, and I didn't know anything about Hollywood. But so the game was expanding. The game was growing. And I think that's what everyone respected. Like, Dennis, people don't talk about Dennis won, like, I think around 5 championships. I know I won a couple. Yeah, I think he won 2 with Detroit, 3 with the Bulls. So he was a very well-respected player throughout all of this. And you just have to take what came with it, right? The hair, and all of the things. But that was just part of the act, and we all knew that.
What was your reaction to his Vegas mini vacation? Was that a big thing at the time when he came back and during it? Like, I can imagine the team might be like, what is he doing? Like,
well, Mackenzie, all of these stories, when you hear them, be honest with you, you didn't flinch, right? Like, I hear these stories and I go, all right, that was just part of the world that we all lived in. And, the one thing that really caught my eye with the story is, okay, yes, should he have gone to Vegas? Probably not, but he did it. And you do what you got to do, and then you deal with the problem. The thing that I respected most about the entire story, and I remember hearing about the story because I was still playing at the time, was that when something really means something to you, right? Whatever you do in life, whenever something means something to you, and if you want it done, you probably better do it yourself. They could have sent the trainer to go get Dennis Rodman. They could have sent some executive to go get him. Michael Jordan went to go get Dennis Rodman. And that was, to me, that was the most important part of the story. Was it could have been anyone, but because the game meant something to all of us, you did things that you needed to do. Michael Jordan knocked on his door. Michael Jordan went to go get Dennis Rodman, and Michael Jordan brought Dennis back into the fold. So when you have that type of camaraderie with the group, when you have the awareness and the leadership of a person like a Michael Jordan, this is what you get. And that to me was the great part of the story, because that moment should allow everyone who was viewing the documentary to see that it meant so much to him, to Michael, to Scotty, to the entire group, that they sent the leader to go get Dennis, because Dennis, we need you if we're going to actually win a championship.
Clear. I like how they touched on how Phil and Dennis were able to kind of bond over that like Native American free spirit culture with the
Did you
necklaces.
like that? You liked that, didn't you? Yeah.
I like that. Do you have any specific memories of Phil doing that, like Native American lessons in his coaching? Because I love like the yoga vibes they were doing, you know?
Well, when you're constantly in a group like that, you begin to understand the group dynamics, right? And I think everyone has to have a connection within the group, the center of the group. So for Phil and for all of us who understood, and we all took leadership, we all took responsibility for our leadership. We understood that every time that Phil stood in front of the group, he was actually giving 12 different speeches. So I think his connection with people was more important than his connection with you as the coach and the player. Because if the person, BJ Armstrong, doesn't connect with Phil Jackson has no chance whatsoever to connect with the player. So whatever that connection may be, right? Whether it was over a book, whether it's over a shared experience, whatever it has to be, there has to be a connection to where Phil Jackson saw the player, saw the person, and we had a mutual respect before we could really get to why we were actually there, which is to do and win basketball games. So, Phil understood that. Phil had this deep connection, and he wanted us all somehow to feel a responsibility to the group. And, Dennis, I think he grew up in Oklahoma, so it only made sense that was a real, true, natural, connection that they had. It was very organic how it all came together.
Mm-hmm. And another huge theme that we touched on briefly was the Pistons-Bulls rivalry, one that was obviously filled with a lot of hate, and you were right in the middle of it. What made that rivalry so intense between the teams?
Well, all right, I'm gonna finally let my guard down, right? What made this rivalry? It was very heated, right? You kind of saw, everyone kind of raised their elevation. The rivalry started out of a mutual respect that everyone had for one another. I mean, that it just boils down simply to that. The truth of the matter is that the Chicago Bulls had a great amount of respect for the Detroit Pistons. The Detroit Pistons were the two-time defending champions. They had wonderful players, great players, Hall of Fame players. They had a Hall of Fame coach. And this group they got a lot of attention for their name, the Bad Boys, and their physical style and all of those things. But truth be told, this was a very mentally tough group. They forced us to look within ourselves. They forced us and pushed us to the limit. And not only did they push us to the limit individually, right? The matchups that we all had, individual matchups, we had to do this as a team if we were going to beat this great Detroit Piston team. And that was a lifestyle commitment that we had to make. And it pushed us to the brink. It pushed us as far as we could possibly go. And that's the type of dedication it took to beat a team like that. So, yeah, there were a lot of emotions, but you know what? There was a lot of respect. And for us, when you're in those type of environments, you can't blink. you have to be mentally as tough as the opponent. So that's where it all stemmed from. Those were great teams, great times. And as I was watching, I started recalling a lot of different things as I was watching. It brought up a lot of emotions, but I'm old, Mackenzie. I'm trying to leave that in the past. I don't want to think about that anymore because those were times in my life where I was consumed. I was consumed with how to beat the Detroit Pistons, as we all were at that time.
Did you feel like you guys had them in the 90 conference finals? You took them to 7. I mean, what do you remember most about the Scotty migraine game?
Well, what I remember most was there was never a feeling of we had them, right? This team, it was impossible. It's like certain things I remember, right? And they were so good that for a while I felt that I had to be perfect to beat them. And we all felt that we had to play a perfect game. But then what I remember, especially going into a game 7, was perfection is impossible. You have to be excellent. You have to be excellent at everything you do. So the Pistons forced us to play the game at such a high level, right? Every pass meant something. Every loose ball meant something. Every rebound meant something. So that was the first time in my career that I had to play with the mental capacity to play every possession. And I had to play every possession as if it was the last possession. What I remember most about that, Mackenzie, was, there are sometimes in things that happen in your life that, you can go right or you can go left. And if there was any moment in my career, in our career, as a group, as a team, as an organization, the 1990 Eastern Conference Finals, Game 7, was our moment of truth. That was the moment where either we were going to do it or we were all going to go home and cry about coulda, woulda, shoulda. And if there's any game in my life that I remember Game 7, because that was the moment that all of us made we made a dedication to one another. We made a commitment to how we were going to play and who we were going to become. And that was our moment of truth. That was the most important game in the history of the Chicago Bulls, because that was the moment where it all began, right? We won the finals in 1991 in June, but to all of those players, we actually won the finals in the summer of 1990. We were dedicated to the 10th degree of dedication to prepare for that moment. We were prepared for everything that was going to happen. And that all started in the summer of 1990, right? So championships really are won in the summertime. And I wish I could go around the league and see who's working, because I could tell you who's going to win the championship then. And that's what I remember most about it is, we lost, but we carried that pain. We knew the other side of what winning was all about. And that's why you saw the emotions and all the things you see when guys are crying. I never understood why you cry when you win a championship, right? You should be happy, but you understand the pain and the suffering and all of those things. And, Mackenzie, when you love something to that degree, it really, you respond in a different way.
And I do want to touch on that here in a little bit, but this was your first debut. Was it weird seeing yourself on the big screen?
Oh God, was it weird? It's so weird to see yourself. You never get comfortable seeing yourself, and it's fun to watch. The other players. I see Steve Kerr and I see Will Perdue and Bill Winnington, and you see Michael Scotty, and then all of a sudden you pop up there. You go, oh, what's going? Because I forgot what was. What we said. I forgot when the interview. It seemed like forever that we did those interviews. So it was really weird to see yourself, and then you're like, you don't want to say anything that sounds. And you were trying to. Hopefully, it fits into the space of the movie or what have you. But it's very weird to see yourself on television.
And in the doc, I remember you saying something that I want you to, if you could elaborate a little bit more on. You said Scotty had the raw ability, but didn't have what Michael brought every day, which was the drive to be the very best every single day. Were you happy with how they put that in there? And was there any evidence, I guess, in the late 80s and early 90s that showed Pippen needed MJ for that drive that you were talking about?
Well, when you're playing the game at that level, you have to learn, and there's only one way to learn. You have to learn from experience. And Scotty, you can't be a great player just because someone said you're a great player. You have to go out there and do it every single day. So we needed Scotty to get the experience so that he had the confidence to know that he could fight through good, bad, and indifferent, because he was a unique player. And if he doesn't go out there and gain that experience in the game, there's no way for him to ever reach his true potential as a player. Michael had already gone through that stage in his career, earlier in his career. Now we needed Scotty to kind of do it on the job. And by the way, win games, right? So that's a different game. So he needed Michael's reassurance that, you know what, it's okay to have a bad game. He needed to know that Michael was going to stand by him. He needed someone to help him and guide him through the things that he was going to be responsible for. Scotty, we didn't need Scotty to be a good player. We needed Scottie Pippen to be a star. That's a totally different ball game. So what I meant by that was Scottie Pippen had an ability that the rest of us didn't. You can talk about wanting to be a good player, but first of all, you got to have the ability to do it. Scotty had the ability to do it, but now he had to be able to do it on a consistent basis. That means you got to do it night after night after night. That's what a true superstar is. And Scotty was able to reach that while we were all developing as players ourselves, right? We were all young and we didn't have a chance to just go out for 3 or 4 years, kind of figure out who we were going to be. We had the responsibility of winning while we were developing. So I thought Michael understood that and gave Scotty his space that he needed to be a true star in this league.
Yeah. And I think one thing too that was clear in the documentary, Michael Jordan did not want to hear anything from Isiah Thomas 30 years later about not shaking hands after Game 4. What was your reaction to him being so animated during the episode? Like, he was heated. He was still heated.
Again, I'm trying to be over 50 now, meaning I'm trying to look back and go, that was then, this is now. It's really hard to I'm trying to laugh because I knew.
But you're low-key now.
Yeah, I knew exactly where he was coming from. And I'm trying to not answer this question. I'm starting to sweat over here because, because when you're in that, you really have to bring everything that you have. And it's great that Michael went there. It really is, because it was really funny. Because when I see him, I'm like, you're old. There's nothing you can do now, right? That was then. That was now. Let it go. It's like, let it go. But, I had the same reaction. It was just that, I want to be cool about it. And I go, yeah, those are great times. But I really felt that. I really felt it. I think it was great. It was great theater. But underneath it, it was just because of the respect, right? Mentally, even to this day, you don't want to give your opponent, or in the case of the Detroit Pistons, a mental advantage. So that will always be there with the Pistons. But it was really funny to see, right? Because we're old now, right? You got let it go. Let's hug this thing out, be friends, talk about the good old days.
So mad.
And but it was one of those things. I remember I was like, I know. I had to catch myself. I'm old now. He didn't let it go, so I couldn't let it go, But Michael went there. It was really funny. I was actually really laughing at it, and I can't wait to see him, because I was like, "Did you really just do that?" Good. But it was great though, right? It was interesting.
I'm glad you mentally told yourself I need to move on from this.
I was going to my Phil Jackson moment. Yeah, I'm my Phil Jackson. All right, I'm going to do my yoga now. But it was really fun.
I love that. And another thing too, I know we're running short on time. Another thing I did want to touch on was the doc really emphasizing the transition from MJ dominating the ball to more of a team focus under Phil, because he mentioned in the beginning he didn't even like Phil from the beginning, but from an X's and O's perspective, why was that transition to Phil so important for the team to reach the next level?
Well, it was really important for us as a group, right? As you're progressing through this league, you learn the different levels of this league, right? There's a regular season level that you play. There's a playoff level. There's a Eastern Conference level, and then there's a championship level. And if we were going to play the game at the championship level, what we needed, Mackenzie, was for Michael Jordan to stop playing the game, right? The game of like just going out there playing and trying to win as many games as you can. We needed to have a formula and a style and identity that was all unique to us. Yeah. And that style became, we had great players, Scottie Pippen, Bill Cartwright, all the rest of us who could play the game. We needed someone who could finish and win the game. And that was Michael Jordan's responsibility. Yeah. So our formula was to keep the game always within striking distance. And then the last 4 minutes of the game, Michael Jordan's job was to win it. And once we got to that understanding of how we needed to play and all of our roles, and we just kind of figured it out, all of our roles, then we had a formula that was like unbeatable because Michael accepted the role of being a closer. That's what he was. He was the closer of a game. In the last 4 minutes of the game, Mackenzie, he was near perfection. And he was just a fabulous, fabulous closer, played the game at a high level. And I think that was what allowed us to take the ball out of his hand. So he trusted us, we trusted him. And then once he understood that, he really was playing a different game because he was playing the games within the games and no one could figure out, right? We didn't need him to score 30 points in the first quarter because we knew at some point during the game that we were going to have to allow him to be Michael, and he would go off on his tangent and then he would come back into the group, and then he would go off on another tangent and then come back in the group. Sometimes we needed him to do that for the whole game, but it was something that he kind of accepted, and we knew it. Yeah. We all knew it, and it was a great formula for all of us.
And for you personally, BJ, I want to know when you thought you guys were, as a team, better than the Pistons. Was there a certain moment where you were like, oh, yeah, like we got this on lock?
I didn't. I never underestimated that group because, Mackenzie, the difference between winning is about that much, right? We're all of us, that we're an injury away, an ankle sprain away from it being over, right? You get hurt at the wrong time in the playoffs. Yeah. That's the difference. So my respect for them, it was when I didn't see them, right? Because that team, they weren't going to just stop playing. They weren't going to stop competing. I always respected that group. And that's what allowed me to respect every player that I ever played against in the NBA, because you learn that all of us have the ability to get beat. And I never, ever wanted to have that feeling again that I felt in 1990. And that feeling sticks with me. When I don't feel like doing something, I don't feel like working out, I just think of that moment of, that moment of defeat. And then I get rejuvenated because, before you can experience success, you got to really respect failure. And I know what failure feels like. And so I never, ever thought I had the Detroit in hand. Even when we were up 20, I was always like, okay, they're going to make them run. I was always on edge with it.
Yeah. And not taking anything away from the Lakers win to the first title, because that was obviously important. But I feel like in some way it was like a footnote to you guys beating the Pistons. What was more of a challenge for you, the Pistons or the Lakers?
Well, every team poses different challenges. The Lakers was great because we won the finals, right? Make no doubt about it. We won the finals, and that was great. The Pistons really was an opponent that allowed us to grow up, right? It still to this day, you can see the emotions, you can still see the respect, you still see the characters. And because if there was a team that kind of mirrored one another, it was the Bulls. Even though we had a different style, we were actually the same. Mm-hmm. So mentally, we knew we had to be just as tough, and we knew they weren't going to give us an inch. I mean, when you went to the basket against them, you knew you were going to not only get fouled, you knew you were going to get knocked down. And we knew that we had to, like, one person couldn't beat the Detroit Pistons. So that brought a mentality where we had to come together to beat them, right? It was like this, all people talk about or coaches talk about, oh, you got to be together and pass the ball to one another. Well, it was the first time probably in all of our careers where we weren't good enough individually to beat this team. We could only beat them together. And that was a very challenging thing because, it's only your natural instincts to go and try to do something and compete and kind of go off on your own way. But we couldn't do that. And we had to have an incredible amount of discipline. So if Michael got hot in the first quarter, we had to go to him and say, stop. You just stop, because if you can't continue to play this way for 48 minutes, or if Horace got knocked down, we had to have the discipline not to react. And we had to have incredible amount of discipline to beat this team in every phase, because they were really good at every phase of the game, right? They were the best screening team. They were the best team that played two-man games. They were the best team that ran screen roll, transition defense. They were just an incredible group, right? Individually, they maybe they weren't the best individually in certain areas, but as a group, they were just a different beast all into themselves. And it took everything in us to beat them. And so it was hard to admit then, right? Because you just want to say you're better than someone, but they were the Detroit Pistons. They were the bad boys, and we knew it. We got it, and fortunately for us, we found a group of guys who were committed to the process.
One of the coolest, if not one of the best rivalries, in my opinion. Watching this doc just made it all like, my God, I wish NBA was like that again.
No, you don't. No, you don't, because you know what? Watching that and going, you have no idea, like, when you watch that, you go, did you really play like that? Like, it's really hard to watch, because you were like, someone could have really got hurt, first of all, right? Watching this, these aren't little men, right? You got Lambier, you got Rick Mahorn, Mark Aguirre, and the fouls that were, taking place, you go, someone could have really gotten hurt. So it may have been fun to watch, but I can tell you this, like, there was a reason that I learned how to have a jump shot, because you know what? Going to the basket was, I was only like 160 pounds, 65 pounds at the time. I had no chance, right? I had no chance, but I couldn't flinch. That's the crazy thing, is like, I think about it now, I go, why was I doing that? Like, what made me think that I could go and run through a screen set by Rick Mahorn? Like, that's just insanity. But I guess when you're in love, you'll do anything, because that's the only way I could figure it out. Because Lambier and these guys, I can assure you, they had 6 fouls and they weren't taking any of them home with them.
I love that. Last question I have for you, BJ. Episode 4 ended on the Jazz sweeping the regular season series in 90. What to look forward to in these episode 5 and 6?
Well, I think we're going to go now to.
Where do you think they're going to go?
I think they're probably going to go now to 92, 93, right? And start covering now that we got a little taste of success, and now you've climbed the mountain. Now it took on a different mindset. So instead of us going out trying to prove ourselves, now we were going to be the measuring stick for all the other teams in the league. So that was a unique summer, because we had to shift the way we prepared, and we had to, being successful is one thing. Staying there is something entirely different. And now coming into the season with the expectations that we were the defending champions was something entirely different. And again, I think we all were reminded of how hard we had to get there. And you'll see in 92 and 93, this group was even more determined, because now we were working with the idea of, like, we got it, and now we're not giving it up. And now we're not giving it up. We were the ones who were initiating all the mental torture for the other teams. And we were purposely coming out with this energy. And I don't know if they show it or not. We were coming out with this energy where we wanted to win the game before the game. And we wanted to, if we could close the team out in the first quarter, we closed them out because we wanted to make sure that we had the energy for the end of the season. And that 92 team was perhaps the best team that I've ever played on. I say perhaps that was the best team that I played on because that team, we were looking to close you out at any moment. If we could close you out in the warm-ups, we would have done it. We were the best team that we practiced. We had amazing practices that year. We had amazing games, and we were a machine. We would close you out in the first quarter if we could, the second quarter. It didn't matter. We were just waiting for that opportunity, and we believed that we could do it. We knew we could do it, and we weren't giving it up.
Well, I will say you gave an A+ performance on the doc, DJ. Good job. Superstar over here. You did a great job. But thank you so much for your time again. Always appreciate and enjoy having you on and talking to you. I can't wait for episode 5 and 6. This is like Christmas every Sunday night.
All right, then. You guys take care. Thank you again.
Thank you. Bye.